Alright, welcome to the overview video of Algorythm, my audiovisual live performance tool that I've been building the last months or years. So yeah, this video is going to be sort of, there's going to be many parts to this, and in the beginning I'm just going to give you sort of a broad explanation of what this is all about and kind of a background. And then I'm going to talk about and walk you through the entire UI and all the features and all the stuff that you can do with this. And then I also talk about like performance, future ideas, and all these kind of things. So yeah, it's gonna be a longer video. So stay tuned and let's dive into it. So as I said, this is like a tool for audiovisual live performances. And what that means is that it's basically sort of a framework with a user interface completely built and running inside of TouchDesigner that you can, or anyone can use to basically play back visuals. And so it's not like a tool for the creation of visuals. You've got to prepare your visuals beforehand, but it's more like a tool with which you can play them back and manipulate them either manually or with like sound or whatever external input, and also add post effects to them, fade between them, and all these kind of things. So it's really all like the focus is really on like generative visuals and making them audio reactive in the end and interactive. Right, but that doesn't mean that you can't also add like media input or external input, camera input, as you can see, but I'll go through all of that. But what you've really got to understand is that it's like a framework for you to use to play back your visuals in a nice way, and to add like audio activity, interactivity, post effects, all these kind of things. Right. So kind of just a brief background of this. The original version was actually created for my bachelor thesis like two years ago, roughly. Like I started 2.5 years ago. So this is now actually the fourth version. So it's actually the fourth time I started from scratch completely. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, a lot of work and a lot of fun. I just love creating interactive UIs and making them pretty and everything. So yeah, it's been a long process, and obviously this isn't perfect. I would still consider this sort of an early alpha or like alpha version, and it's pretty stable. But yeah, I will talk about performance and all of that more at the after I walk you through all of the features. And yeah, the one thing that you might notice already is like the UI here. So I'm gonna start with that. So yeah, I pretty much everything you see on the screen is completely custom built. So I didn't use any widgets or anything. I just kind of built all of the parts or all of the assets that I used for this completely, yeah, from scratch pretty much. And it's very little of this is like top based. It's a lot of this is just like comps and using the new text comp and everything. So the basic idea of the UI is that it sort of goes from like left to right. So we have all of our input here. We have all the visuals and visual processing and manipulation going on in the center. And then we have our output here. So we can send this out to the projector and everything. We can add post effects and yeah, all of that. And then we have the clock and like monitoring down here and the footer. So that's really the basic idea. We're going like from left to right, from input to output. And I'm not actually going to start with the input. I'm going to start with the visuals and give you an overview of how that works. So I'm going to start with the very center, because here is actually sort of the heart of Algorythm, is where you load your visuals. So your TOX files. So TOX files are really just custom components that you can create in TouchDesigner. So base components in TouchDesigner usually with like custom parameters. So what you can do here is you can define a folder, and so you can like just browse for any kind of folder, and Algorym's just going to look for all of the TOX files in there and just put them in a list in an alphabetical order. The idea behind that is that if you want to go on stage and like perform and just have different kind of concerts and whatever, is that you have different, like a DJ, right? You have different sort of folders for moods or styles or genres or whatever. So like happy mood or deep mood or like ambient or techno or whatever, right? So you can have all these different folders and then quickly just load them in here and then play them. It's kind of the idea behind that. Yeah, you can reorder them, and you're going to see why you can do that in a minute. And you can delete them, you can refresh them here. You can preload them. So this is actually important if we're looking at all of our toxes here. So if I were to like now take this and put that here, you're going to see that like a brief sort of stuttering. So what I can do is just click on preload before my show, and it's just going to look through all of these different toxes and display them once. So now if I move from one to the other, there's no stuttering. It's like a very smooth transition from one to the other. Right, so you can like just drag and drop these in here. That's one way of going about this. And you can then, as you can see the output here, I'm actually going to get rid of all of these post effects for now. And I'm going to go with this slider to the very left. So right now what we can see here on our output window is just this one visual. It's on the left. So we always have two visuals running at the same time with different types of visuals. I will talk about that soon. But yeah, as you can see, we have two different types of visuals going here at the same time. So I might want to add like this noise to the right. And now I can just either, like I have some different options here to like composite them or switch between them. So I can just fade manually from one to the other, like this. I can also click on this fade to like automate this. And if I click, it's gonna go back again. And this like the amount of seconds this takes to like fade from one to the other is based on this number. So I can just change it to 0 and it's just gonna go to instantly. And I can also go up to like 20 seconds if I want to. But yeah, if I just right click, it's gonna be 2 seconds, which I think is a good like number. And yeah, so that's one thing, just fading, right? Then you can also composite them. So you can just click on different like numbers here to use different modes of compositing. And you can always see the output here, which is already creating kind of an interesting effect here. So if I just click on this X, it's going to turn that off and enable, or if I just click on the number again, right? It's just going to turn that off and enable me to manually fade from one to the other. And then what I was saying is that we can reorder these. And that's because this list isn't just a list where you can pick stuff from randomly, but this also functions as a playlist. So what we can do, we can just click on next, and it's going to select the next one here in the list and then fade to that. And again, I can click on this, and it's going to, again, select the next one and fade to that. And again, the fading is based on this amount of time here. So again, click on next and fade between that. So you can do this either manually again, or you can turn auto on. So if I turn auto on, actually I'm going to turn this off again and like go down to like, I don't know, 0.1 minutes. So if I now turn this on, you can see this like this little time thing going up here. And then once it reaches the top, it's gonna automatically do the next thing here. So basically what I can tell it to do is like every 3 minutes, switch to the next one, right? So and that way you could sort of automate, like if you're just a DJ or something, you just want stuff to like run in the background, you can sort of make algorithm do the switching. So you don't really have to worry too much about like switching between visuals, and you still have kind of an interesting show maybe. Right, so that's really the idea here. You have different toxes that you can use, and I might make a separate video about how to set up your toxes, but just very briefly, it's kind of easy. All you need to do is to create a base component to put your visual in that. You've got to create custom parameters, and then we'll talk about that in a minute. And you're just going to create like a top at the end that's called BG, usually a null top at the very end that's called BG. Yeah, that's kind of all you've got to do. And then save it as an external tox, right? And then you can just load it in here and play with it. So that's really the main idea. But there's some more specifics, but that's really the gist of it. Right. So let me actually talk about the parameters and the visuals themselves. So you can see the custom parameters here. They automatically update when I change my my visual. And basically what algorithm is doing, it's just grabbing all of some types of custom parameters from your component. So right now algorithm supports int, float, pulse, and toggle. And personally, I haven't really needed any other types, but there might be more in the future. And I'm also going to show you something else about this. So yeah, they're going to show up here, and they're going to sort of be displayed in different ways. So this is just the default way for like floats and ins. And then if there's like dot, like here, that's a pulse. And then we also have toggles where you can see like we have this little toggle here. So we can like turn these on and off. And then you can just, by just dragging up and down, you can like manipulate them manually. So that's one way of doing this. The minimum and maximum of these, so if I just go back to this grid, are gonna be like algorithm automatically uses the min and max that you define inside of the custom parameters of your talks. So and as you can see here, we can go up between whatever value. Though they don't actually need to be normalized, which is what I'm saying. So you can like have any kind of ranges here, and then algorithm's just gonna make use of that. And if you right click, it's also going to be returned to like the default that you have specified inside of your talks file. Let me quickly talk about presets now. We have this presets thing up here, or like section, and we can switch between already created presets here if we want to. So I've just created 3 different presets, and I can also call them something, and then rename them. Or I can also call them something when I create them. So to create them, I'm just going to click on this new field here. I'm just going to call this new. And now I'm just going to like mess around with these parameters and do whatever. And now I can save this. So now I can like switch between my newly created presets and the other ones. And yeah, the switching, the fading is actually based on the fade time here. So if I go down to 0, you can let's see it it switches immediately, and if I go higher, it's gonna be like there's gonna be more of a fade time now. All right, so you can right click to set this to default. I think 1 second is pretty good. Yeah, so we can delete presets here manually. We can name them something here. You can always click save here, and you can also go through them by clicking on here. Okay, this apparently doesn't work perfectly yet. It's still an alpha version, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm going to show you something very quickly, how you can manipulate this, so why this exists, and also how you can manipulate these parameters. So, for example, we can have like a kick detection. I will talk about this later. We go down with this. So we have a kick that's just going here, and I can just drag and drop that on any kind of parameter to manipulate that. The thing is, I can't only drag this onto my custom parameters. I can also drag this on other parts of my UI. So for example, I could also drag this onto this. So now I can like make my kick actually, like it's not perfectly set up yet right now, but we're gonna look at that later. Basically my kick is now going through the presets. That's why we have these. We can also pick a random preset by turning this on or off. That's kind of the idea here. You have these input devices with which you can manipulate all of these parameters and also other parts of the UI. So for example, I could even manipulate my switch here. Okay, so let me look at 2 other ways at messing around with your custom parameters. So one of them is the internal. So that's really just the way you have set up things in your custom component, and it's just the internal TouchDesigner way of displaying parameters, and you can just mess around with them. So far, they're not working with presets. That will probably be something for the future. And then we have structure, and that's kind of I'm really proud of this. It's a lot of fun and just looks very funky. So this is basically a way to control all parameters at the same time, because here we are like always just controlling one thing at one parameter at a time. You might be able you might want to connect like a MIDI device to this, to all of your parameters, and then you can play with several at once. But and with this way, you can work with all parameters at the same time, because basically what this is doing is just always looking for like these points here that you can see in a circle. They represent the floats or ins of your parameters, or these are basically your parameters. And what TouchDesigner is doing is just looking for the distance between every parameter and this circle in the center. So you can like move this around, and as the distance between the circle and the parameters is constantly measured. It's like controlling all of the parameters at the same time. And as you can see, that can create some really funky looking things, and it's a lot of fun to play around with. And you can also like change the order. So basically they're randomly sorted like around the circle here. And you like every time you click on here, it's going to be a new order. So it's going to like change the way you can play with them. So you can also click on randomize, and that's going to get rid of the circle and just put them in a random positions. So every time you do this, it's going to create like a new sort of set of visuals here, or like points here, not visuals. And one last thing you can also do is click on automate, and then you could even change to randomization or whatever, right? You can just kind of automate this. And the idea behind this is if you've automated this and you've automated this, then, well, there's a lot of automation going on, right? So you don't have to really worry about even changing the visuals much because it's kind of happening on its own. All right, there might be more functions, features. Oh, I say functions. It's coming from the German. There might be more features here in the future. But yeah, right. I think that's kind of it for the Toxes. So here on the right, it's literally just a copy of this left one. So it's like the presets. Actually, one word about them as well is they're actually stored inside of the Toxes. So if you were to save a Tox and to give it to somebody else, algorithm could read the presets that are saved in there. So that's one thing I want. And that also enables, you know, if you were to put a noise here and then put like a displace here, you can see the presets are also loaded here. So yeah, right. So let me talk about media now. For media, we just got to click on here, and then we can use any kind of video or image pretty much. I would highly recommend using a HapQ or some kind of codec that is really made for playback, right? For fast playback. So not H.264, so not typical MPV, MP4. I mean, but yeah, convert your movies in, or your video files to some kind of codec like HAP that TouchDesigner can read quickly. You can use Shutter encoder for that. Right, so I can like just take any of my converted videos here, technically. So I'm just gonna use this one here, I'm just gonna go back because I want to show you this. It works better on this one. So what I can do here is I have two different ways of playback so far. There's gonna be more in the future for sure. I have Q and bounce. So for Q, what I can do is click on trigger, and it's just gonna trigger like, or it's basically just gonna play the video from some random part in the video. So I can just click on this and it's just gonna play this back, like kind of cut from one part to the other. And then I can also reload like from one point if I wanted to. Just ignore the scale. And then we have bounce, which basically bounces from like one part to the next. So it doesn't like pick a random spot in the video, but it just kind of moves forward when I click trigger. And I can also turn off play. So only when I click trigger, it's gonna like jump to the next one. And if I go up with lag, it's gonna be a bit smoother. But yeah, that's kind of the two ways here. And obviously, as these are like elements here, or like parameters, UI elements, we can make them audio reactive. So I can use my kick to trigger different parts of the video. So if I just quickly go up. Yay! Right. Yeah, let me actually just quickly show you here as well. It's kind of nice. You can just use this kick on anything. Yeah, that's really the heart of algorithm. Cool. So let me go to the next one, which is camera. Hello. You can set up the camera by clicking on the setup parameter. You just get like the TouchDesigner window. You can flip it. And yeah, that's kind of it about the camera. I would always recommend going to 30 Hertz or higher if you can to have a smooth playback. And we also have externals, so we can either choose between NDI or siphon spout input, and we can set those up here. That's it for all of the visual part, and we're gonna look at the input now. All right, so let's have a look at the input, and we're both gonna look at the audio setup and the input devices that you can add. So we've got this little section up here, which is called audio setup, which we can like show and hide by clicking on the header. And inside of here, we basically have 3 different sections that we can use to set up the audio. So we have this output here, which basically determines which audio to use, both for the input devices and for the speakers, if you want to send out the music to your speakers. Yeah, to either use one of those, we can switch between file or device, and we can set up our speakers here if we want to. And yeah, by default, all of these gains are at 0. So we have file and device here that we can set up. So for file, if you click on the wrench icon, that opens up the audio file OP, and you can just you're probably familiar with this, and you can just add any kind of audio file here to use. And obviously file is more for rehearsing and trying things out at home. For live performances, or if you're somewhere on stage, you're obviously going to use some kind of device input, like an interface, like a master of a DJ or something, or a microphone, Right, so for the file, what we can do, you can click on play and it's going to play the file, but it doesn't really do anything. So to actually use the data of this, we've got to turn up the gain. And now we're going to look at this more in a second, but now if I add a kick detection, you see it's making use of this data that's coming in there. So if I were to switch to device, you can see it goes back to 0. And now if I go up with my gain of my device, you can see it picks up my microphone. Right, so again, for the device, you have this wrench icon, so you can select your audio device here, change whatever you want to change. So if you want to send it to a speaker, all you've got to do is, set it up here and then change the volume here. So if I were to go back to file, now you can hear my file being played. Right, I don't actually need to play that. I'm just gonna look at the devices now. So basically we have this loader down here, where we have both a search function and some different tags. So basically have 5 different families. So if we click on one of these labels, it's going to show us different kind of operators or devices basically that we can use. It's not operators, it's devices. So with the middle mouse, we can go between these. And so we can show and hide different families at the same time. And it's a bit similar to the operator view. Yeah, there's a bug here that sometimes loads stuff for whatever reason. It makes me really mad. Well, so to add a device, all you've got to do is just click on it. So add a kick detection and a hat detection. And now you can see we have also different ranges here of the spectrum. So I'm just going to look at this one device for now. So basically, this consists of, every device consists of a header and some content, and usually we'll have a channel that we can use to drag on and onto anything to use that data. So in this case, with the kick, we have the spectrum here. We have this handle where we can actually change where we want algorithm sort of to pick up the signal from, in what range exactly. So in this way, we can sort of fine tune very nicely what frequency to use. So yeah, then we have these 4 other UI elements that we can use. So we can go up with the gain. So that's gonna increase the amount of data that's coming in, basically, or increase the input volume pretty much. And then we have gaps. So basically what's happening here is that we're triggering, we're using a trigger chop. So we're using a certain threshold. So if the value that's coming in is below that threshold, it's not going to be triggered. So only if it's above this defined threshold. And maybe there's some signals that come too often, or some errors. So you can go up with gaps, and that's pretty much just a retrigger delay to just kind of smoothen out the signal. And then we have smooth, which actually smooths out the signal. So if I just use that on here, now you can see it it's very instantly and very subtle, the kick. And if I go up with this smooth, you can see it's just fades out and in and out pretty nicely. So yeah, that's what that smooth is for. You can always right click on any parameter to reset to its default, and you can always right click on a header, if you've changed all of these, to reset all of them to default, except for this handle. So yeah, same thing with the hats, just on a different spectrum. You can see the frequencies down here, and it's the same things though. So I'm going to get rid of these. As you can see now, if I delete a device here that was connected, it's gonna still be linked, but it doesn't work anymore. So if you re-edit it, it will work again. So there's no kick right now, but yeah. So just so you know that. So I'm gonna show you some other things you can do here. Basically, you also have level, which is just like the overall level of the input. So no specific spectrum or like frequency, I mean. And we also have snare detection, which is the same thing as hat and kick, just for snare. And then we have the spectrum. So what you can do here is that, as you can see here, it's the only device so far that doesn't have an output channel that you can use on any parameter. But rather, what this is doing is creating a spectrum that you can pick up inside of a Tox. So inside a Tox, you can use a select with an expression in there, just somewhere in here actually. And if you use that inside of the select chop, then you can use the spectrum and you can refine that here live, basically, and just use the input. So you could use this for use the spectrum for instancing and something like that. So that's the idea here. Cool, then let's actually look at external. We have MIDI and OSC input. So far, only these. There's obviously gonna be more like Leap Motion, maybe Kinect, these kind of things. Let's see what else comes there in the future. Yeah, so for MIDI, basically you've got to set up your MIDI device as usual, like here in TouchDesigner, dialogues, MIDI device mapper. And then you can change your settings here. And right now I don't actually have a device connected, but if I clear this and if I were to now like turn a knob, that channel would appear here. So very straightforward. And then we also have OSC. So with OSC, it's the same thing, really. You can set that up here. You can set up the network port and address and everything. And then you should be able to send data here to algorythm. Yeah, I've tried that. It works pretty nicely. So you can use, for example, ZigZim, which is an app for your phone, which you can just use to use like the acceleration of your phone. So you can like shake your phone to, I don't know, change the gamma here or whatever, you know. So there's all of that. Just one thing here as well. Like if we have some devices in here, and now you can see they're like not showing even though I added them. With the middle mouse, I can just go like up and down because I kind of hate the bars, the internal bars. This is not perfect yet, but it kind of works. So just so you know that. Middle mouse to like scroll. Also here and here, by the way. Right, so I'm just going to clear this so I have no devices in there. And then, yeah, I also have a constant, which is just a value going up. I can like reset that here. I can loop it. Yeah, and same thing with noise. So just going to add a noise here. It's just a noise value. And we have 3 different ones for each, so you can have like different speeds and periods and whatever. Cool, and Ableton is going to come in the future. Right, so one last thing here that's very important is the beat section or the beat family. And so far that consists of rhythm and sequencer. And what's important to understand here, if I just add this rhythm, this is very much based on the clock down here. So I'm just going to give a quick tour with the clock here. So far we only have 4x4 segments. That might change in the future. But yeah, what we've got here is a tempo that we can set. So we can either set that manually by typing that in here. So I could just type like 140. And I can also go up with like with these buttons. So I can like go up and down with these buttons, like 0.1 or 1 or 10. So I can very easily adjust these. And then you can see it always goes like 1, 2, 3, 4 around the clock here. And so to reset that to the 1, we can click on 1 here. And you can see, if I click on this button, you can see all of these channels are like resetting. So if I were to listen to a song now. All right, that should be around the correct tempo. And if I reset, now you can see it's sort of aligned to that value, like to that song. And a cool trick here to use is to actually add a kick. If you have a straight kick in your song, then you can use that channel on the tab. And I'm gonna like just right click at some point. And then basically we should have a pretty perfect value here. But yeah, I don't know what the exact value here should be, but you can always refine that with these buttons. And yeah, then you've got to like, yeah, I'm just gonna go back. No audio here and reset this, and then you can see I can use all of these channels, so like eighth or like quarter or whole, whatever, and I can use them anywhere again, as with all channels. And the same thing basically is going on with the sequencer. That's also very much based on the, as you can see, it's very much based on the clock down here, on the tempo. Here we can basically create a rhythm by clicking on these fields, and that's going to be output here. So we can also choose how fast this is going, and we can also choose like how many segments we want to have. We can reset it here, basically clear it. And yeah, and then again, use that anywhere. And we can smooth it here, 1 to 2. Cool. So there's probably going to be more beats things here, but yeah, that's it for the input devices now. So now let's have a look at the output devices and the output generally. Okay, so we have the output window here, which always shows like exactly what the viewers are going to see. So if we like composite stuff or whatever, we're always going to see that here. And we have a few options here. So we have a master, basically. We have some settings here. So we can change our input resolution that you can pick up in your talks. We can change out the output resolution and some other things here. Turn off anti-aliasing and send NDI or spout out. So we can take that in, but you can also send it out to like another machine or whatever. So yeah, that is basically it for that. You can click on this projector, for example, and now you can't see that, but it's like now I can see the output on my second monitor, and I can even click the second one here, so it would be like on the third monitor pretty much. Right, and then we have this mapping. So if I turn on mapping, I can click on edit, and now I can like, you know, change this so I have like, for example, if my projector isn't properly set up, I can like fine tune things here. So this isn't like a proper mapping system, but it's like, you know, you can nicely corner pin stuff, and you can change the scale here. Either like, you know, have it linked, or if you turn on the link, turn off the link, you can manually change X or Y, like independently pretty much. So you can reset that here. You can also reset the corners here. And yeah, that's basically it for the mapping. So usually if you're not using that, I would recommend turning this off. And then we have the post effects. So for post effects, the system is really similar to the input devices. So basically we have different types. We have basic, we have transform, stylized, feedback, and miscellaneous, though there isn't any there yet. But let's say I want to add some chromatic aberration. I could either type that in here, or I could yeah, just add that by clicking on stylize and then adding that here. So by default, if you start the program and like add some post effects, they're not gonna be turned on, so nothing changes. But now if I click on this power button, you can see the effect taking place. Now I could also use, for example, like a kaleidoscope and change, like adapt that here. So yeah, I mean, really, this is just 2 projects here, and with some post effects already looking pretty sick. And one thing that is important here is the order. So you can actually also change the order of like input devices, but there it doesn't really make a difference for their functioning. But here it really makes a difference if we're first doing like chromatic aberration or first doing kaleidoscope. Maybe with like a pixel sorting effect, you can see this a bit better. So if I turn this on, if this is behind like or underneath kaleidoscope, then the kaleidoscope is going to be pixel sorted. But if we use pixel sorting first and then put a kaleidoscope effect on it, you know, that's going to make quite the difference, like the way we sort them. So you can just already with that, you can mess around with this a lot. Like just try out different orders here, and different effects, obviously. So yeah. And all of these, again, like, you know, as with all the other stuff, like the power on and power off, all of the parameters here, you can either manually change, or you can change with like all of the input devices. So you could use like, again, like a kick detection, for example, and to turn, like to maybe even reset the pixel sorting, or to, I don't know, change the amount here of like chromatic aberration. So you can see you can make this audio reactive pretty easily. Looks pretty sick. Cool. And then you also have the feature here, the option to like fold all of them, to like, you know, have that kind of makes a bit of difference in the performance, and also just cleaner, right? If you're not using them right now, you can also turn all of them on and off at the same time. You can reset all, so they're all being reset to their default. So you can also do that by right-clicking here or right-clicking on the header, just the same as here. And also you can clear, so you have no post effects in there. Yeah, that's really the idea here. I'm kind of proud of this this search system. Really happy with that. It's actually not that complex, but I'm still happy that I built a search system inside of TouchDesigner. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that you can play around with here. Obviously, there's going to be like more in the future. And now let's just look at some other things here. So let's look at monitoring and performance. So basically, we have our little monitor down here that tells us the FPS and also the CPU milliseconds, like the load on the CPU in milliseconds. So this should never be higher than 60, otherwise it's gonna drop frames. But yeah, unless you have a pretty decent computer, it's probably gonna not run at 60 FPS. And yeah, that's kind of a thing. Like I really tried to make this as performant as possible, but obviously there's a lot of shit going on at the same time. And you know, just the UI is still taking a lot of like resources and all of the connections of the different parts and stuff. So yeah, it's not perfect, but I tried my best, and I hopefully will be able to optimize this even more. So usually, like because I'm recording this right now, we're like with no post or input devices added, we're sort of around 12 milliseconds, but usually it's more around like 8-9 for me. With no stuff added, and that's kind of the idea behind this, is this modularity that you can add devices and like fold them and turn them on and off and these kind of things. So this is really because of, you know, that one part of that is just obviously user experience, but also a huge part of that is just this sort of performance part. So if I add a lot of like input devices, you're gonna see this goes up like a bit. So if I like clear them, it's gonna go down. You can't see a huge difference right now, and actually the audio analysis is pretty efficient. I don't think it gets much more efficient. But yeah, still that's kind of the idea here. Same with like this internal thing, and like so you can hide parts of it. You can hide this, and it's gonna make it a slight difference. So yeah, that's really the idea. And yeah, so I'm curious to see how it performs for people on different machines. It's probably going to be better on Windows. And one thing that's also important, obviously, is the resolution that you're working with. Though actually, yeah, for me, I can work in 4K with no problem. But and usually the bottleneck is actually on the CPU and not on the GPU, because yeah, because of the way TouchDesigner is built, I suppose. And we also have one thing which is important, which is like the tox setup. So if you create your own tox files, then they shouldn't be too heavy on the CPU, but more like heavy on the GPU, if heavy on anything, right? Let me talk a bit about some other stuff. So one thing is the settings here. One last thing actually inside of the UI. And this is something I'm super happy with, which is the color schemes. So you can't, like, this is the default color schemes, but you can just switch here and you have different colors. So literally every UI element you can see on the screen is like connected to this color system. So you can basically have as many color schemes as you want. And you also have like FPS, save, tox, and save. So basically if you've turned this on, every time you save, it's gonna also save every tox file, so the changes in there. So I'd usually leave this on, so you're saving presets and stuff. And you can also change the FPS. Right, and then some future ideas. One thing you might have noticed that there's this Ableton tag here. So I want to definitely integrate Ableton more. I don't know exactly how yet. Same with VSTs. I want to integrate VSTs, but I'm not sure how yet and what way is the best way. And yeah, obviously there's going to be a lot more input and output effects. And yeah, there's going to be probably some more automation And I also want to integrate some of your ideas if you have any. So always feel free to share feedback and ideas, please. So, you know, I want this to be sort of a community thing. I want people to share their talks with each other and stuff. So I haven't found a perfect way to do this, maybe just in the Discord, but let's see. So yeah, I'd kind of like this to be a community tool. And then last but not least at all is like how you can get your hands on this and how I distribute this. So far, it's just gonna be on Patreon, so it's just gonna be available for patrons. And yeah, so far I'm also letting patrons look into the behind the, like, you know, going into the project. Actually, in the future, I might sell this or might make it publicly available in some way, but then I will probably just use the pro version of TouchDesigner to like lock the contents so people are not messing with it, but you know, only when this is like stable stuff. So yeah, there might also be like more video about like the sort of behind the scenes, but I'm not sure about that yet. Maybe just an overview. And then there's also going to be a workshop soon on October 23 about like a UI building in TouchDesigner that I'll share. So make sure to check that out. I will link that in the description soon. And yeah, I hope you enjoy using this using this tool. As said, this is an early version. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming, and I hope this is going to run a lot smoother in the future. And God, my head is dead now. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this overview video and the software, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.